Have you ever wondered if there's a way to escape from prison that's so reckless and seemingly impossible? This man not only managed to get out of prison by clinging to the undercarriage of a car, but even more shockingly, he chose to hide in the most unlikely of places, living inside a giant toy store for months without anyone knowing. Curious about how he did it? The screen opens with a grim portrait of Jeffrey Manchester's life. As a former Air Force veteran, Jeff should have had a bright future, but reality dictates otherwise. That day, with heavy steps, he went to his ex-wife's house to celebrate his beloved child's birthday. What should have been a happy moment turned into a heartbreak when the child innocently asked for a bicycle as a gift. Jeff could only remain silent, holding back his breath. His wallet was dying. As a result, he could only give his child a used toy that he had wrapped in such a way that it looked new. Perhaps for some people, buying a bicycle is a trivial matter. But for Jeff, thinking about secondary needs is an unattainable luxury. To simply make ends meet, he has to work hard at odd jobs that yield little income. Seeing Jeff's plight, an old friend named Steve felt sorry for him.
Way is not your superpower.
Okay, then tell me what my superpower is, then.
How many houses is on the street?
28.
And out of those, how many got chimneys?
Steve offered some enlightenment that might have been unethical, but it made sense to someone in despair. Both young veterans, Steve chose a shortcut in the underworld as a fake passport broker. Although he didn't invite Jeff to get involved directly, Steve was annoyed to see Jeff continue to hide his military expertise. For him, Jeff was a predator in espionage disguised as a commoner.
With a brain like yours, I'll be running the whole goddamn world. You know, you the smartest dumb nigga I ever known.
Due to his uncertain income and bleak future, his wife finally gave in and filed for divorce several years ago. Custody of their 3 children fell to his ex to ensure their lives would not suffer along with Jeff. After taking his children for a walk, a sight on the roof of a McDonald's store triggered a circuit in Jeff's brain. He saw a worker making repairs there. Instantly, Steve's advice about observation skills began to resonate in his mind. Driven by curiosity, Jeff began to examine the store. He observed every tiny detail. When employee shifts changed, money transfer routes, the exact location of CCTV cameras, and even searching for blind spots that would allow him to sneak into the safe room undetected. The plan for the roof robbery was born. Long story short, the night of the execution arrived. After a full month of precise observation, Jeff made his debut. With tactical maneuvers, he climbed the roof and infiltrated through a narrow air vent.
Good morning, team.
As the employees were just beginning their morning preparations, they were surprised by Jeff standing tall with a rifle. Despite this being a robbery, Jeff calmly asserted that no one would be hurt, as long as they cooperated. His humanity was still greater than his evil intentions.
Say what to do and you guys just do it. Okay, I want you to get your coats back on.
One by one, the employees were asked to go into the food cooler so as not to get in the way. However, there was a unique moment here. When Jeff saw the store manager shivering because he didn't have a jacket, he felt bad and offered his own warm jacket for the manager to wear.
Okay, happy now?
My ears are cold.
Jeff's strange behavior continued. Instead of immediately fleeing with the loot, he grabbed the phone and called 911. He honestly reported the robbery and identified the employees locked in the freezer so paramedics could rescue them from hypothermia. Over the next 2 years, Jeff became an urban legend. He burglarized nearly 40 stores using the same ventilation method. The media and police dubbed him Roofman. He was labeled the most slippery criminal because he almost never left any forensic evidence at the scene. Not only was he slippery, but Roofman was known as the most polite robber in the world. There were never any fatalities, and witnesses were impressed by his polite demeanor. This image of the warm-jacketed robber really made the police struggle to find a way to catch him. Steve, who was watching the news on television, began to feel something was wrong. His suspicions fell on Jeff, especially after the police released the physical description of Roofman, who was athletic and had an ideal height, very similar to his friend's profile. Realizing his cover was compromised, Jeff immediately turned off the television and changed the subject by inviting Steve to celebrate his son's birthday.
Come on, let's go.
Thanks to the pile of money from the robbery, Jeff had now become a wealthy man who owned a luxurious house and even managed to persuade his ex-wife to reconcile. This was the life Jeff had always dreamed of. The climax was, on his son's birthday, he was finally able to buy his dream bicycle as a gift to atone for his past sins. Happiness seemed completely within his grasp. However, the wheels of fate turned quickly. The police finally managed to sniff out the roofman's true identity. Jeff was arrested without significant resistance. Behind bars, Jeff had to face a harsh reality. He was sentenced to 45 years in prison. A very high price for a bicycle.
Ain't no getting out of here. Get that idea out your head.
In prison, Jeff refused to give up. Because of his extremely polite and kind behavior, the warden trusted him to work in the light asset management department. However, when he was asked to check for oil leaks on an expedition car, his scouting instincts kicked in again. A brilliant escape plan began to form in his head. Jeff returned to his trusted formula, in-depth observation. He began memorizing the expedition car's entry and exit schedules, the driver's break times, and even how the gatekeeper used a mirror to inspect the undercarriage. For him, every second was valuable data.
Yep,
2 boxes, 2 pictures.
It's all yours, Mr. Cummings.
Thank you, bud.
To carry out his mission, Jeff secretly assembled a wide metal plate that he would use as a hiding place under the car's chassis. His heart was pounding as the car arrived at the gate. The guard began inspecting the undercarriage with his mirror. Jeff was nearly caught because the metal plate he had made turned out to be a little too short to cover his entire athletic body. Luckily, by bending his head a little too far, he managed to escape the officer's observation. After several hours of holding his position in this torturous position, the car finally stopped on a deserted roadside because the driver needed to urinate. Without wasting any time, Jeff got out and ran as fast as he could into the darkness of the forest. After hitching a ride on several passing vehicles, Jeff finally arrived in front of his ex-wife's house, hoping to see his children's faces once again. Unfortunately, news of his escape had already spread far and wide. The police had surrounded the area. In a desperate and confused state, Jeff spotted a toy store that was still open. Without thinking, he entered and pretended to be a prospective customer selecting items. Jeff was at his lowest point. Hungry, thirsty, and mentally exhausted. As the sound of police sirens began to approach the store, he took a desperate measure by climbing onto the toilet ceiling and hiding there, holding his breath. Fate had brought him to a unique place. The toilet ceiling turned out to be directly adjacent to the store manager's office. When the store closed and everyone had gone home, Jeff climbed down from his hiding place and began studying every nook and cranny of the store's CCTV security system. He was forced to borrow some snacks to fill his stomach. However, since this was a toy store, there was no hope of any nutritious food. Jeff could only fill his stomach with various sweets. That's when he turned on the TV and saw his face making national headlines. Jeff was stunned by the massive search for him.
What? Police are asking if you see someone who looks like Manchester, please call authorities and do not.
The next night, Jeff returned downstairs and managed to find the store's CCTV operating manual. Using his wits, he began hacking the system. After successfully disabling the cameras permanently without triggering an alarm, Jeff felt the toy store was his domain. While combing through the shelves, he discovered an empty space behind a particularly large mountain bike display case and decided to make it his secret home. Days passed in the toy store. The news about him was still hot in the media. To keep his mental health from going crazy with loneliness, Jeff began doing irrational things. He collected piles of balloons, dolls, and even Kinder Joy chocolates. In the darkness of the store, he turned on music and danced alone like a child. This was how Roofman stayed sane amidst the pressure of his fugitive status. Jeff began building a defensive fortress. He stole mini CCTV devices from the shelves and installed them in every blind spot in the store. including one hidden camera that he aimed directly at the manager's desk. Through his secret monitor, Jeff often observed the drama of life in the store. One of these was the interaction between the stingy shop owner and a beautiful employee named Lee. Lee often protested the inhumane working hours policy, but her boss always oppressed her with company rules. Jeff, who was observing from behind the scenes, began to feel sympathy for the girl.
Yeah, you're an unbelievable dick. $, that's the dumbest password I've ever heard of.
He found me.
After 2 weeks in hiding and feeling that the police were starting to let down their guard, Jeff began to venture out for some fresh air. He modified the emergency exit so he could access it anytime, and borrowed a mountain bike for nighttime walks. When he found a payphone, he tried to call Steve. However, only Steve's girlfriend answered, and Jeff left a message that he was fine. He also tried to contact his ex-wife, but the answer he received was devastating. They already considered him dead.
And you need to move on too. Don't call here anymore.
One afternoon, Jeff's CCTV monitor showed the shop boss being rude and refusing to give a toy donation to an orphanage. Lee was the fundraising director, who was working hard to collect toys for the orphans. Jeff was furious. Even though the boss had a large stock of used toys in the warehouse, he still refused to donate. Jeff's inner Robin Hood was awakened. He went into the warehouse, packed a sack full of quality toys, and took them out.
Oh, it's too heavy for me. Where do you want the toys go?
Where do you want me to put them?
Jeff went to the church where Lee was attending. Feeling confident, as if his face had begun to be forgotten by the media, he handed over the toys to the mysterious donor. After the event, Jeff was introduced to Lee by the church administrator. Cleverly, Jeff made up a story that he was a secret government agent who had just been transferred to the city. Impressed by Jeff's polite demeanor, Lee began to open up to him. The next day, while they were on a date in the park, Jeff revealed that he was actually a widower with 3 children. As it turned out, this honesty only made Lee even more attracted to him. She considered Jeff a responsible man and eventually invited him to her house to introduce him to her 2 young daughters.
Have you played 4 swords?
Very angsty teenage music for your listening pleasure.
Jeff's security began to falter due to a silly mistake. One early morning, Jeff was taking a shower and hanging all his clothes to dry in the middle of the store, assuming it was still empty. However, his boss suddenly arrived much earlier to finish some pending work. An embarrassing moment ensued. Jeff emerged from the bathroom wearing only a towel, or even no clothes, just as his boss was leaving his office. Both of them froze in a very awkward situation.
What the fuck?
Jeff managed to escape to his hiding place by covering his face with a table fan. However, this incident led to his identity being discovered again. The police immediately closed the shop and conducted a massive search of every inch of the building. Realizing that his life at the toy store was over, he contacted Steve for help with a fake passport. However, Steve charged a high price. Jeff had to provide $50,000 in cash immediately.
Goofy. 50. Hey, you a lot of risk, man.
A desperate Jeff stumbled upon a deserted gun shop on the outskirts of town. Feeling he had no other choice but to secure his freedom, he was forced to put on his Roofman mask and return to crime. He broke into the gun shop to fund his robbery. His plan was ironic. He would rob the toy store where he had been hiding, knowing exactly when the security system was weakest. Wearing a black mask, Jeff bravely entered the store in the morning. He ordered the boss to tie up all the employees. However, the situation escalated when the security guard tried to fight back, forcing Jeff to beat him unconscious.
Get down. Don't do this right now. Guys, everybody just calm down.
After emptying the safe, Jeff prepared to leave. However, an employee tearfully pleaded with Jeff to call an ambulance because the injured security guard wouldn't wake up. Jeff's conscience spoke again. He went to the store's public phone booth to call for medical assistance. However, just as he hung up, he ran into Lee, who had just arrived late to the store. That evening, Jeff met Steve and handed over the stolen money. His passport and new ID were ready. Jeff said goodbye with a heavy heart, leaving a final message for the family he missed so much. Just as he was on the verge of fleeing to the border, his phone rang. It was Lee. In a soft voice, Lee reminded him of the Thanksgiving that afternoon and how much his children had been waiting for him. Jeff was at a crossroads between running away or saying goodbye humanely. Love finally trumped logic. When Jeff knocked on Lee's door, he was greeted not by a warm smile, but by a police gunfire. Lee stood there, tears streaming down her face. She recognized Jeff's face from the phone booth yesterday.
Search of that.
Lee had to make the hardest decision of her life: report the man she loved to the authorities for the safety of the community. Now, Jeffrey Manchester is back in prison, serving a much longer sentence. Behind bars, he finally came to a bitter conclusion. Running away from problems is never the solution. It actually destroys everything good that remains in his life. The story ends with a profound moral message about repentance. For those of you who don't know, the film Roofman is based on a true story that shook America in the 2000s. The unique robbery, the unconventional politeness, and the action movie escape make the story of Jeffrey Allen Manchester one of the most iconic criminal histories ever. So, do you think Jeff deserves to be called a criminal if his only intention was to make his child happy, and he was always polite to his victims? Or do you think Lee's action in reporting Jeff was right, or was it a betrayal? Let us know your thoughts in the comments.